This is TWiT.
And I see you picked up on I think, the funniest story of the week.
Yeah.
A little note from Consumer Reports to Satya Nadella.
So, Consumer Reports has a good rep, right? Other than that Suzuki thing from the 1980s or whatever that was, they're doing pretty good.
They're excellent. They don't take advertising. They're
well regarded.
They're pure. And of course, Paris Martineau works there. Stacey Higginbotham works there. Nicholas De Leon works there. We have 3 regular contributors who work there. So
yeah, I mean,
watch your words, Thurrott.
No, I like them. Like everyone else in the 21st century, I read the Wirecutter now, but they're good. They're good.
I think, honestly, I think it's more reliable than the Wirecutter.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
I did think this letter was a little odd.
I did too. Say. And yeah, so I saw that.
I support it. I don't think it's wrong.
This is an interesting, I'm not going to call it a debate, but it's an interesting question or something. I don't know. Which is, Windows 10 has been in the market for 10 years. For the 3rd time in history now, Microsoft has extended the support for a major version of Windows, in this case for 3 years. You have to pay for it. First year, though, consumers getting an additional year for free. So, to me, in the span of history, I think to myself, this is mostly okay, right?
It's pretty normal. It was 10 years, which even Consumer Reports notes.
Yeah, right.
They warned us in 2015 that it would end October 14th, 2025. We didn't think that day would ever arrive, but it is now just around the corner.
Many days I never thought we were going to arrive. But yeah, so in the scope of history, the way I think of this is Microsoft, as they moved into serving businesses and enterprises, especially, adapted to this kind of licensing model. And this is when they did the 10-year mainstream / extended support lifecycle for Windows and other products. And that lasted for not quite 20 years, 15 years at least. Windows 10 was actually sort of the beginning of the end of that. I guess Windows 8 in some ways. But, but the thing that happened over that period of time that's kind of counters this in a way is PCs got a lot more reliable. PCs, when you think of PCs and reliability, you think about blue screens, you think about, you're in the subway or the airport, there's a thing up there not working and it's because it's running Windows or whatever. But really, in reality, Windows is much more reliable than it's ever been. And I guess on that note, you could make a case that maybe it should be supported longer.
Here's their point. And by the way, I should point out this was signed by Stacey Higginbotham.
Yeah.
So former
Policy
host
fellow.
of This Week in Google.
Policy madam, am I right? Anyway,
yes, she is. But I think the point that's kind of interesting that they make is almost half of all Windows users are still on Windows 10. But more to the point, many of them, maybe a quarter of half of that number, bought their PC in the last 3 or 4 years with a full expectation they'd get to the next version of Windows.
Did they? That's not technically true, but
which part? That they didn't expect to get to Windows?
People who bought PCs in the last 3 or 4 years got Windows 11. They didn't get Windows 10. Businesses could have put Windows 10 on PCs. There was obviously a period of time where there were both in the market, but you'd have a hard time finding Windows 10.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I misread the letter.
No, I'm sure. There's some. I read it, and I'm like, as you go through it, you're like, no, not really, no. So I do agree. This is a question. The situation in which X% of PCs out in the world are still using the version they're getting rid of is not unique to Windows 10. This happened with Windows 7. It happened with Windows XP. Are there more numerically by unit or whatever today with Windows 10 than there were with 7 or XP? That's debatable, and that I'm not really sure of. They haven't. As I said to the guy next to me at the Lenovo event at IFA, Microsoft uses 4 different numbers when they want to tell you how many people are using Windows, right? And they don't really know, for sure. So we get these different numbers, but let's call it 1.4 billion. So if there are 50%, let's call it, to make it the math simple, 700 million computers in the world still running Windows 10, it's a lot of computers, right? I guess the fine print here is that if this is an absolute necessity, you can keep going with 10. If you're a business, you can do that for 3 years. And, we talk about this a couple of times, at least on the show, but at some point you get to where the computers that are running Windows 11 are so modern and so much more secure and have so much, much more going on for them that it's kind of a tough call to say, well, I still want to use this old computer. I still want to use my version of Office from 1997 or whatever the scenario is. Anyone who's been out in the world, if you go to a doctor's office, dentist, you see this all over the place. There's still older out of support versions of Windows being used in many places, and there are still companies supporting those older versions of Windows, even when Microsoft doesn't. Mozilla just announced they're going to extend the support in Firefox for Windows 7 another year or two. I don't remember the time frame. That's incredible. Windows 7's been out of support forever. I mean, that's kind of interesting.
It's probably the case that most people running Windows 10, even if they knew that it wasn't going to get updates in 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, just keep using it. And isn't that what usually happens? And it's not businesses. They're smart. They have IT departments. They know better. It's home users.
I mean, you might have businesses that are doing this still, but hopefully what they're doing as well is using third-party antivirus or whatever else.
Yes, so that's the question. Could you run Windows 10 safely for some time?
Yep, and this is actually, honestly, this speaks a little bit to the argument for keeping the support, which is fundamentally Windows 10 and 11 are the same operating system, right? They look different. And there have been changes to Windows 11 that have improved the security of the system, but basically 10, 11, and then what I'll call like 11 version 24H2 plus are really the same thing. So if all you're doing is shipping security updates that you are creating for Windows 11 anyway, I mean, what's the big deal?
Well, that's the other issue. And that's the thing that bothers Steve Gibson is Microsoft is making these updates. They just decided not to offer them.
If you think about other platforms in this space, not the Mac necessarily, but like these really big volume platforms that have 1 billion plus users like iOS or Android, the mix is very different because you're essentially forced to upgrade on those platforms very quickly. And no one really complains about this, right? You're not going to find a guy with an iPhone 16 or whatever running iOS 16 or something. Like at some point you can't, right? They stop digitally signing these things. You upgrade, you're always going to be on the latest version pretty much. And there's not, Consumer Reports isn't writing an article saying, Apple, you got to support iOS 15 forever. I mean, or whatever.
What they're saying is that these are unusual circumstances because, Microsoft 4 years ago announced, Windows 11 is going to require a certain level of hardware, and your computer, even one that you bought last year, may not be compatible.
Right. Yeah. No.
So that's somewhat
by the way,
different.
and that's only going to continue. And the evidence of that is Copilot Plus PC, which did that again, right? They raised the bar again. So they're creating a kind of a have and have not situation, if you will, for functionality and for compatibility that's based on what hardware you have in your PC. They're being a little more aggressive about it. This is something that Apple has always done. It's interesting. Like in the old world, when Microsoft dominated and the Mac was this tiny thing, we didn't have phones and whatever. This was a big deal. Today, Apple has as many customers as Microsoft does, maybe more. Android does as well, or Google does. And you don't really hear these kind of complaints about those platforms. They more aggressively, Google or Apple does. Google actually doesn't have as much control, but people are running Android phones. They could be like mid-level Samsung phones. They might be 3 to 5 years old. They're probably on Android 12, whatever version. I don't know what things are out there, and you don't really hear people being like, man, you got to keep supporting that thing with security updates, Google. What are you doing? Like, you don't really hear that. So what is it about a PC that makes it an exception to this?
Ironically, on a PC, there are alternatives. You can make that hardware continue to run with Linux, for instance.
Yeah. They just throw it in the trash, which I think is the alleged concern. It's always like every time you hear we need to keep supporting Windows 10, it's always about the landfills.
Yeah. But these are perfectly good PCs.
Okay.
In fact,
I mean, I guess. Yeah. I mean, maybe
in fact,
Some
they
of them
probably run at the same speed if they had an up-to-date operating system on them, like Linux.
Yeah. So the nice thing about a PC is it's an open with, quotes around it, open platform where you can do that, right? Very easily. Most people won't, but you can.
No, most people can't because it's a technical challenge.
Yeah.
For most people.
What there should be out there is some organization or organizations that are collecting these instead of recycling them, giving them away. Okay.
There are.
But maybe this,
it's a patchwork because it's every community
It's not
has its own little thing. There used to be a national organization. I think it's called the Christina organization.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're still around. Let me look them up because I used to, on the radio show, I used to tell people, here's what you need to do with your old stuff.
Imagine, I don't know what your local library is like. It's actually really nice here. But I can just imagine this kind of circle of chairs with old people and someone's trying to explain to them how to use Linux or maybe put Chrome OS Flex or whatever on these things. And it's just like the dull stares of incomprehension, Yeah. I think it's weird because these solutions do exist. There are ways around it. I think most people just would keep using them and not think about this and they'll be fine, So it's a weird thing for them to right now come out the way they did this and say, yeah, I mean, it's like,
well, they're trying to be consumer advocates. So the Christina Foundation is still around. You can still, this is, most of the time it's a regional thing. There's your local e-waste recycler or your local charity where you can donate hardware. Sometimes it's even just a guy. I know many people around the country who do this kind of as a good work. They take old PCs, put Linux on them and donate them to people in need or groups in need. So the Christina Foundation is one of the few national organizations that will do this, and you can donate used computers to them. So it isn't, I think it's, I mean, if people are smart about it, they're not going to put it in the landfill. It's at least going to go to an e-waste recycling.
Yeah. This stuff is tough. If you think about like safety equipment in cars, right? Always debuted in the most expensive vehicles, like airbags were in Volvos and Mercedes and whatever else first. And then they made their way down to, lower end cars, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's the sad thing here is that the people who can least afford to upgrade are going to be stuck with these older computers that maybe don't work as well or are running an out of support operating system, or if God help them, they could figure out how to get Linux on there and then they don't know how it works and they don't know how to fix things when they go wrong or whatever it is. Like it's
Linux is not. I wish it were, but it's not. I wish somebody like Google or somebody would come along. Google had Chrome OS, and you can install it on these PCs, but they don't. It's not that easy. Sort of.
And it's also not really the full experience, right? You don't get like Android apps and whatever else.
Yeah, I really wish there were some.
Yeah. I mean, there is this stuff, like you said, there are things.
Well, Christina, by the way, is now Digitunity. Not the greatest name.
Digitunity.
DIGITUNITY.
You could get punched for that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially if you have more than a few to get rid of, like if you're a business, this would be a smart thing to do. Get a tax break, donate it, and they recycle them, they upcycle them.
I know to a lot of people, this seems like some kind of a sinister plot, and with a company like Microsoft, it's
kind of
understandable
feels like
that we would go
for the money. You don't think
but they are a for-profit corporation. I mean, they're not a public good,
it's
charity.
Not a great insight. They're in it for the money.
No, I mean, they are. You're right. I mean, you're right. but I also feel like there's enough in Windows 11, whether it's this, it's not even creeping, this aggressive addition of AI, especially Copilot everywhere. We'll talk about some of that later today, that I think is going to turn people off. You also have things like Chromebooks, actual Chromebooks. You have things like the iPad, which now works like a computer. And these things are simpler. They're not as full of overt ads and in your face, hey, did you want to summarize this? Like Clippy. It's like Clippy, like the worst thing Microsoft ever did. Let's do that times 1,000, like how often can we get in your face? And, even before the AI stuff was taking off, there were already behaviors, and they're in 10 too, but in Windows 11 especially, where it starts to rub you the wrong way. And if you're older or younger, but older definitely, in my case, when you've kind of gone through this whole thing, you understand PCs, you get it, and it's aggravating, you know?
Well, there's also the question, and Steve Gibson brings this up as well, of whether these requirements for TPM2 and Intel processors, 8th generation or later, are legit. I mean, we know you can install Windows 11 with a little hacking on older machines. Are they arbitrary?
Windows 11, So when Windows 11 was first announced, they were absolutely arbitrary.
Okay.
Today, I would say less so, because now there are these security advances that actually rely on technology.
So the plan, Microsoft had a plan, which was to take advantage of these hardware characteristics to make a better Windows.
Yep. And when they announced it, it was like, wait, what are you doing? Because at the time, it was like, I'm sorry, but this is Windows 10. So if Windows 10 runs on this thing, this will run on this thing. Right. I don't understand what's the problem, you know? And the truth is that situation is still there. It's still true, but you actually do have a more secure PC if you're running 11 with this new,
so that's good,
newer hardware. It is good. It's good on multiple levels. It's good for you as a consumer if you can afford it, and that's what you need or want. It's good for Microsoft. It's good for hardware makers because they're selling new PCs. It's good for silicon vendors, et cetera. But I don't know. the thing that I think this is the primary problem I have with this thing, is just that this isn't the biggest digital platform or a personal computing platform. This isn't the thing that most people are spending most of their time on every single day. This is a weird place to drive a stake into the ground. I think it speaks to the elderly nature of this publication and their audience and the people who work there, compared to the kind of hip young people that are doing YouTube stuff and are at the Wirecutter probably, where, you know, this concern would be like, what is your problem with Windows? Like, they're like, who's using Windows? What do you mean? And there are a lot of people using Windows, but I mean, as far as like being engaged every day and screen time and all that kind of stuff, some of us are drones, some of us are idiots like me who just sit there and work all day long. But like most people, they're doing that on a phone, right? You know, that they're spending that time on a phone. It just feels weird to me. I not that they're like wrong, literally wrong, but in the scheme of history here, when this has come up, this is the most generous, if you will, I hate to use that word, but that Microsoft has ever been with regards to extending support, in that they're providing consumers with this for a year for free. And yes, I mean, there's that, it's like, yeah, but you have to, you know, back up your PC to your OneDrive, and
you have to use another Microsoft product.
Yeah, but what does that get? It's
free,
them?
but
what is it getting? Like, all it does is use up a little bit of data on their servers. It really doesn't train AI. It doesn't do anything for them. It's not useful.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this little highlight from a much better show, and longer too, called Windows Weekly. The whole link to the show is right below me. And of course, we stream live right here every Wednesday. You can watch us do our thing or download it here or in your favorite podcast player. Best thing to do? What do they say? Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.